His Divine Grace of Ayacharanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Friends, say Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Dvaita Gadadhara, Shri Vasudhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopakavada Sayam Kun Radha Kunda, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Nachuradam Ki Jai, Navinitam Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamaya Ki Jai, Srimad Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Sri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay. Tell them to launch normally.
Start Windows normally.
Normally, start Windows normally. Hey. Start Windows normally.
No, I think you.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. Fifth canto, chapter 15, text 12. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yasyadware Bhagavan Utvaratma Guru Madhyate Guru Sama Pite Shada Vishuddhachala Bhakti Yoga Samarpiteja Palam Ajahara. So I'll just read the Sanskrit since we don't have it up there today. Yasyattvare Bhagavanatvaratma Moguni Madhyaturu Somapite Shradha Vishuddha Chala Bhakti Yoga Samarpiteja Palam Ajahara. I'll just read it again. Yasyattvare Bhagavanatvaratma Moguni Madhyaturu Somapite Shradha Vishuddha Chala Bhakti Yoga Samarpiteja Palam Ajahara. Yasya, of whom King Gaya. Advare, in his different sacrifices. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Advara Atma, the Supreme Enjoyer of all sacrifices. The Yajna Purusha. Magoni, when King Indra. Madhyati, intoxicated. Uru, greatly. Somapite, drinking the intoxicant called Shoma. Shraddha, by devotion. Vishuddha, purified. Achala, and steady. Bhakti Yoga, by devotional service. Samarpita, offered. Ija, of worshiping. Palam, result. Ajahara, accepted personally. So translation. In Maharaj Gaya's sacrifice, there was a great supply of the intoxicant known as Soma. King Indra used to come and become intoxicated by drinking large quantities of Soma Ras. Also, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, the Yajna Purusha, also came and personally accepted all the sacrifices offered unto him with pure and firm devotion in the sacrificial arena. So you repeat. In Maharaja Gaya's sacrifices, there was a great supply of the intoxicant, known as Soma. King Indra used to come and become intoxicated by drinking large quantities of Soma Ras. Also, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, the Yajna Purusha, also came and personally accepted all the sacrifices offered unto him with pure and firm devotion in the sacrificial arena. So purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Prabhupada Ki Maharaja Gaya was so perfect that he satisfied all the demigods who were headed by the heavenly King Indra. Lord Vishnu himself also personally came to the sacrificial arena to accept the offerings. Although Maharaj Gaya did not want them, he received all the blessings of the demigods and the Supreme Lord himself. Yashagure Bhagavan Advaratma Mukho Vimadhyatur Somapite Shraddha Vishuddha Chala Bhakti Yoga Samarpiteja Palam Aja Palara Somaganam Tudandasha Gananjanam Shlakaya Chakshura Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. So one thing that's very important to understand is that even though Lord Vishnu came, he didn't take any of the soma. So this word soma is mentioned many times in the Vedic literatures. The Yajurveda is mentioned, in the Rig Veda, so many places it's mentioned. And people nowadays, of course, have been trying to figure out what it is because they want to imitate. Some speculations say that it's ephedra, which is like a stimulant that sometimes the athletes use and they die from taking it. And some people that say it's marijuana and poppy. There's different speculations about what soma is. It's quite interesting that even some of the anthropologists have analyzed some of the cups that were used in the sacrifices by the brahmanas. And they said, well, there's the imprint of poppy seeds here. You know, anyway, poppy. Not the poppy seeds that you use to make cookies, but the poppy seeds that are, anyway, you understand. So whatever soma is, it's not something that's taken by pure devotees. It's not something that's taken by people who want to advance in spiritual life, but by people maybe who are mixed in their mixed devotion, like the demigods, because it's an intoxicant. So let's speak a little bit about intoxication. It's commonly misunderstood what intoxication is. I mean, generally, we think that intoxication is drugs. I mean, that's just one small aspect of intoxication. I mean, there's many reasons people do take intoxication. And it's not only like getting drunk or, some hippies in the dormitories, just like smoking the marijuana or something like that. There's many, many reasons. And all these reasons for taking material intoxication should be avoided. And we're going to talk about different types of intoxication. It's a class on intoxication. So, first of all, there are certain types of material intoxication that are permitted, which is interesting. And one type I can think of course, if one is in extreme pain in the hospital and they have to take some pain reliever, if they're in hospice or something like that, isn't it? Hospice, and they're suffering from cancer, and it's extreme pain, then it may be permitted to take some some marijuana, any of these, or morphine, or any of these other drugs to alleviate the pain. Or if you're having an operation, usually we don't perform operations, I don't perform operations, but usually people don't perform operations without anesthesia. So it's not really the substance that determines whether something is breaking the principles of intoxication, but it's actually the use of it that determines. And you'll find things that are not generally considered intoxicants can be intoxicants. I think we talk about this. So it's really important to understand this, because one of the principles that we're restricted in is taking intoxication, isn't it? Four regulated principles. No illicit sex, no gambling, no eating, and no intoxication. So, and interestingly enough, you'll find three of the principles related with intoxication. Illicit sex, or the attraction between men and women, intoxicates one. And like we mentioned many times before,
brain scan of someone who loves the same as someone who snorts cocaine. We mentioned that in the old that before. So that's a sort of intoxication, and therefore, sometimes the woman with the man is called Madhava, means mad. Like that. You understand? Madhava is also the name of Cupid. So Cupid intoxicates people. So illicit sex is intoxicating, and gambling. Let's speak of gambling. Gambling is very intoxicating too, because one just becomes completely aloof from his normal state of consciousness. Even if his normal state of consciousness is Maya, he just becomes within an illusion, an illusion within an illusion. That's what, actually Prabhupada coined that term, insofar as people take an intoxication and puts them in an illusion within an illusion. In other words, you already think you're the body of this big illusion. I mean, you're already intoxicated, just by being in the material world. Prabhupada Vishwavadi says, Nunam Pramata Purute Vikarmaya Indriya Pritya Purvanti. That one who considers the gratification of the senses, yet Indriya Pritya, to be very important, the senses are very dear to him. Nunam Pramata Purute Vikarmaya. That he becomes mad, in other words, intoxicated. So you see that there's intoxication going on in the material world anyway. So, anyway, so there's bona fide types of material intoxication, and one is suffering from some disease or needs some pain, like that. So why do people take intoxication not in a bona fide way in this world? Let's analyze these things so we can see if we're doing these things and whether we're actually breaking the principles. What does it mean to break the principles? It means to take us further away from Krishna. That's the point. Because the first regulative principle is to always remember Krishna, and the second regulative principle is to never forget Krishna. So if you're doing something that facilitates your forgetting Krishna, that's like breaking the principles. It's very interesting. All right. So one type of intoxication that people take or indulge in is the type to enhance their performance. You ever heard of that before? Performance enhancing. What do I mean? Coffee. That enhances their performance, because people wake up in the morning and if they're not that Krishna conscious, they're really dull. And so they take it to get themselves up in the morning. It's a stimulant. Or in sports, there's, like I mentioned, the Srimad, which is a type of stimulant, right? Or, other types of stimulants too. Or, of course, steroids are not specifically stimulants, but they help one build up their muscles. They're performance enhancing in one sense. So, and you find that many of our athletes who won gold medals, there was a very famous person who won a bicycle championship. Don't mention his name. That's not a subject matter of the class. And it's found that he was taking performance-enhancing drugs like that. So this is one reason people take it. And it's not justified just because you're performing. Let's say, I chant better. I can wake up early in the morning if I take my cup of coffee before Mangalarti. It's not justified because it covers your consciousness. So that's the real point. What covers a person's consciousness? So that's one way. Another reason people take intoxication is just to relax. You take a little wine at night, right? Wine with a meal, relax. And so when they can relax, they can engage in a social intercourse with their friends. They feel much more at ease, like that. And generally, they go to in Europe at least, they go to the pub. Pub is where everyone's heard of the pub before. The pub is where everyone hangs out and talks all sorts of nonsense. I mean, just everybody who's over 18 goes to a pub in the UK. I mean, it's just like, you can't have friends unless you go to the pub. I mean, America's a little different. We just go on our computer. And that's enough. Anyway, just go to that type of intoxication. And another reason people may take intoxication, like in the 1960s, was for so-called spiritual life. You know, they think it actually enhances, just like people sometimes in India. Prabhupada said that this marijuana, of course, came from India, as all good things come. So, so if we want to introduce Indian culture, we should introduce marijuana, right? Of course, they take it in a much more concentrated form. You know, there's really, really big things. And they have to drink bong. You heard of bong? Before. And so probably the hippies learned it from India. And then in some places you go in India, it's growing everywhere, on the sides of the roads. I even in Govardhan, one devotee pointed out, you know, if you ever want some this herbal medicine, you go by this particular temple, there's 3 or 4 acres of it growing freely every day. Or one time I was going circumambulating the temple, and some of the devotees in the back of the temple, they were, anyway, Toki, or whatever it's called. And they offered me, they said, Maharaj, Mahaprasad. Because it was offered to Lord Shiva. I mean, obviously nobody offers marijuana to Krishna, hopefully not. And so it was offered to Lord Shiva, and they thought, you know, and I was thinking if I refuse it, I'm going to offend them. And so I just said, well, it's a Kaddishi today. Any other day is all right. But not a Kaddishi, so people, and in America, of course, people were taking it all over. There's books written about it. You know, Timothy, I don't want to mention his last name. And, you know, one of his associates who wrote a book, Be Here Now, all the hippies would read it, and they thought that they were realizing things. Of course, it's interesting, people think they're engaged in spiritual realization, and they may even record what they're saying under the influence of these different drugs, and psychedelics especially. And they're thinking they're coming up with the most profound statements and realizations. And then you play back the tape or the MP3 later on, you find out it's a bunch of nonsense that's going to come out. It's really, really amazing. So that's another reason people take it. Another reason is just entertainment, or to be unhappy, cover the miseries that one is experiencing in this material world. I mean, there's many, many reasons people take intoxication. Of course, these demigods, they take it, they're generally Sakama devotees. Sakama means they have some material desires to fulfill, and they're also Krishna conscious. They take it for enjoyment. You know, that's their method of enjoyment. But it actually takes one further away from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So let's discuss, all right, we discussed the reasons people take intoxication. Let's discuss different types of intoxication, you know, the methodologies of intoxication. And this may not be too politically correct. So obviously the drugs. Let's leave that aside because I don't need to get into those details. But also, let's say video games. You know, where people become so much immersed. In many places in the world, people just go for like 12, 14, 16, 24 hours playing a video game because they become so intoxicated. Or many different aspects of the media, like television, movies, like that, is very, very intoxicating. I know in India, movies are very, very popular. Of course, American too. And people will crowd these theaters just to forget about their ordinary lives. You understand? Because their lives may be boring, or they may be in miseries. So for a few rupees, they can actually go and just forget for a few minutes and see this phantasmagoria on the screen. So that's a type of intoxication. Also, Prabhupada said frivolous sports. You understand frivolous sports? And I was speaking to one of my godbrothers one time who was very attached to sports. And I said, don't you understand, Prabhupada said we should not engage in frivolous sports. And he replied to me, but he said, I'm very serious about my sports. I'm not frivolous. It's a good excuse. You understand? If frivolous, you know, means just like not being serious. So he said, when I do sports, I'm very serious, so it's not a frivolous sport. So, it's some people may know. But anyway, so So, the sporting activity, frivolous sports. And of course, one can exercise, one can do things for a variety of reasons. Sports are not prohibited. I mean, if one's doing them for, keeping the body together or developing some sort of team spirit with the devotees, that may be all right. I mean, like we've gone whitewater rafting with the devotees or played volleyball with the devotees. And it develops a team spirit. So there's actually some spiritual purpose behind it. So it's not just that sports themselves, or when they, of course nowadays, I was just reading that 25% of young people who play sports have some serious injury from it. And then a lot of them, about 30% of those people get concussions. And then when they get concussions when they're small, when they're growing, and the brain is developing, it causes the loss of IQ later on in life. So I mean, I would think the responsible parents would not send their kids to like these sports, like soccer or football or anything like that, because, I mean, you're damaging your kid's future. There's a good chance that your kid's future is going to be impeded by that activity. And it also increases the animosity that people have towards each other. I mean, obviously competition is natural, but if it is increased to such an extent that people are developing this anger towards each other, like they do in some of the football games in South America. They kill each other after them. There's soccer riots. I mean, I think that's a little too much. So that's another type of intoxication. Another type that may be politically incorrect is like food intoxication. Like people, I know in the beginning days of the Krishna conscious movement, we would take so much sugar, and of course it would make us all jolly, right? We took it. And then the next morning we'd be all angry with each other because, just like we were hungover. Not in a literal sense. I guess in a literal sense. It's just that we took so much that the blood sugar dropped the next morning, and therefore we had low blood sugar, hypoglycemia. And we were angry with each other. We were fighting. Brahmacharis would fight each other the next morning. In the evening, Sunday evening, we'd be ecstatic, best of friends. Sunday morning, Monday morning, we'd be the worst of enemies. So, so these are the types of intoxication, sugar, too much sugar, fatty foods. People get intoxicated or attached to these things. Or, people question about chocolate too. These are big things. People make smoothies with chocolate and things. So, chocolate is a stimulant. It's a CNS. It's a central nervous system stimulant. That's why they give it on Valentine's Day, because it's a stimulus. A little bit, and in other words, it's not the chocolate per se, because a little bit can actually be good for your heart, a little bit of dark chocolate without sugar. You take chocolate, little dark chocolate without sugar, it can be for the heart. There's certain things, like I said, it depends on how you're using, what reason you're using it for. Even things like we're not supposed to take onions and garlic, but garlic can also be used as an antiseptic or an antibiotic. An antiviral. It's one of the best things. I've seen devotees cured from MRSA with garlic. That means a bacteria that's can't be stopped with normal antibiotics. So there's a use for these things. It's not the substance itself that makes it intoxicant. It's how you use it and your mentality of when you're using it. Like I said, even marijuana that's used for pain relief if someone has terminal cancer is not considered intoxicant in a negative way like that. So it's really the mentality. It's not the substance, it's the mentality. Like TV can be used as an intoxicant, or movies, or any of these things that I mentioned before. So, fats, sugar, different types of foods can be used as intoxicant. You drown yourself up. You drown your sorrows with food. Or, because you don't love Krishna, then your whole loving propensity is focused on So anyway, so these are all different types of intoxication. So let's talk about something much more interesting, spiritual intoxication. Because spiritual intoxication brings us closer to Krishna. That's really the point. That really should be the standard, whether we consider something against the practices or principles or that is in tune with Krishna consciousness. Now, what is spiritual intoxication? We can get intoxicated dancing and chanting for Krishna, right? We can get intoxicated hearing Krishna's pastime. In fact, there's this thing called Divyan Mada. Divyan Mada means transcendental, basically intoxication. Madness. You know, just like if someone's mad, a mad person can say anything. So if a devotee becomes transcendently intoxicated, he can dance for 72 hours, like Keshavara Pandit, who was the associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the house of Srivastava. So you have this spiritual intoxication, and that's really what we're meant to go for, is this spiritual intoxication. And then in the spiritual world, we find Krishna and his associates sometimes take an intoxication too, which is really interesting. I mean, let's say Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, Lord Chaitanya's associates would sometimes eat so much, it would frankly up to the neck, he'd keep feeding, that's intoxication. But that increases one's Krishna consciousness, that brings one closer to Krishna. Or you have in the spiritual world Lord Balaram getting intoxicated with the gopis, and he's taking this maruni beverage, so intoxicated, and he calls for the Jamuna to come here, and the Jamuna thinks he's just intoxicated. And the Jamuna refuses to come, and Lord Balaram takes his plow and he scratches the Jamuna to bring the Jamuna close. And today, if you go to the banks of the Jamuna where this pastime took place, you actually see the scratches of the plow. That Lord Balaram's plow, you actually see there's like many rivulets that are almost parallel from the Jamuna to where the temple is, where Lord Balaram executed this particular pastime. So I mean, they're spiritual intoxication because they become mad with love of God. It's all based on pleasing Krishna or pleasing Balaram, who is not different from Krishna. Or then the Acharyas are even right about Krishna and the gopis drinking honey wine. And the gopis become so intoxicated that they pour the wine on the wrong side of the glass. I don't know if you've ever seen a wine glass. One devotee did that to Prabhupada one time, not because he was intoxicated. A devotee was trying to pour water for Prabhupada. And these fancy glasses, sometimes it looks like the other side is a receptacle for liquids. And so the devotee had it upside down and he poured it on Prabhupada's desk and the water got all over the place. Because he thought it was the top. So anyway, so in Krishna's pastimes, this also occurs. That the gopis, they're just like shaking from intoxication because they're drinking all this honey wine. And they're pouring it and it's coming out on the ground. And so that sort of intoxication brings them closer to Krishna. Because Krishna enjoys that. I mean, because whatever we have in this world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual realm. So there's intoxication also there. And there's sporting games there. Right? Krishna and his friends, they're playing with a bale fruit, throwing it from one to the other, teasing each other. So there's sporting games there. There's dramatic performances. There's Krishna's illicit life going on. Of course, with Krishna's not illicit. But apparently, the conjugal rasa, Bhagavatam rasa, unalloyed, lawless love between Radha and Krishna. So that's going on in the spiritual world. And so whatever we have here covers us up. Whatever they do there makes them closer to Krishna and gives them real happiness. And whatever we have here makes us miserable. People don't become happy by taking intoxication in the material world. I mean, I remember the university, when I went to the university, on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, all the kids had been intoxicated the night before, and they were lying in the halls, in the dormitory, practically drowning in their vomit. And they did not look happy. They were not happy campers, per se. But in the spiritual realm, they take this touch. So anyway, Krishna and the gopis. And another example is in the Ramayana, where Hanuman and the monkeys, they encountered Sita. Of course, Hanuman encountered Sita by crossing the ocean to Lanka. And they were carrying back the message to Lord Rama. They were so happy that they broke into the Madhuban, where the honey and the honey wine was kept. Sugriva had this like nice garden, and they were drinking so much honey, and the honey, of course, causes people to urinate more, so not just people, monkeys. So, and so they were actually just like, it all came out from them. They were drinking so much honey, and they were just rolling on the ground. They beat up the guard. The guard's name was Dadi Mook, and they beat him up. And Sugriva was happy that his honey garden had been destroyed, because he understood this meant that they had found Sita Devi. So he was very happy with that. But so you find they're very happy they're getting intoxicated. They're the monkeys. So that's Krishna conscious intoxication. So anyway, if you want to enjoy intoxication, you know a monkey. So if you want to enjoy Lord Rama's pastimes as a monkey. So anyway, if you want to enjoy intoxication, you can do that in Krishna consciousness. I mean, it's so nice. Kevalananda Kanda. It's simply happiness. You dance, chant, listen to Krishna's pastimes. And as we mentioned on Sunday, several people have approached me since then saying they have no taste. It's interesting. Several people have approached me. They say they have no taste for chanting, or no taste for the various aspects of Krishna consciousness. And so then they need to take another type of intoxication, just forget about their miseries. Immerse themselves in computers, immerse themselves in this and that. And so the reason people don't have a taste is generally because they're committing some of the offenses on chanting. At least they're not attentive, or at worst, they're offending the Vaishnavas, the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because if we don't commit offenses, and we endeavor to chant clearly and purely, then every aspect of Krishna consciousness will be so blissful for us, just like Bhakti Vinod Thakur has that nice poem, Shuddha Bhakata Charana Renu. He said, since I've taken up devotional service, and just a little taste of prasadam, the holy names, everything causes ecstasy. So we can be intoxicated 24 hours a day in Krishna consciousness if we don't commit offenses. And we don't cultivate material desires. We can have them. We better try to get rid of them. If we don't cultivate material desires, we don't commit offenses, and we associate with pure devotees of the Lord, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Swami Prabhupada. And then we can experience literally spiritual intoxication and all these material things we won't want to engage in anymore. I mean, we won't be attracted to falling in love, we won't be attracted to, what else is there? Overeating, we won't, eating the wrong things, or won't be attracted to sporting activities. I mean, it's amazing how devotees sometimes are attracted to sporting activities. I mean, I'm giving this example, which is intoxication. I gave the example that many times before that when I was in Fiji, the devotees were watching the rugby games, or Fiji Sevens, or whatever it's called. I don't even know about this game. And it was taking place, this game, it was like World Championship, was taking place in the UK. And that means in Fiji was the middle of the night, Fiji time. So midnight I started hearing from all the ashrams, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Because they were watching this. And I was shocked. even the next morning I asked all the devotees, did you see it, did you see it? And they said, all said yes. And then I even thought for a second that the women would be more intelligent, just the stupid men who were doing it. And so I asked the women, did you watch it? They said, yes, we watched it too. That means they're not having enough happiness in Krishna consciousness. There's something missing from their performance of Krishna consciousness, because rasa varjam rasa vyasapam jasrata vortate. You'll experience a higher taste. You won't be interested in the intoxicating features of this material world. So any questions or comments about intoxication? Because this is what the verse was about, soma ras, because devotees asked about that. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could please maybe detail more about how, like in the beginning you're saying how like one would take caffeine if they're like
Performance
so
enhanced.
dull. Yeah, and how it keeps one from Krishna. Because you're depending on that.
It gives one a false sense of strength and enthusiasm and everything like that. It's just coming from some chemical thing in the body. I mean, just like, where's that in the Bhagavatam that says that in one particular planet, the women feed the men this particular type of, you may remember this, intoxicant, so they feel like as powerful as elephants. And then they do something with them. Anyway, they cheat them in some way or other. I forget the exact thing. So it just gives you a false sense of, being on top of the world, being powerful, and increases the false ego. That's what I see with the coffee. I mean, just like one becomes wired up. Of course, some people are so much ignorance they may need to take it in the morning because they've been engaged in other activities the night before, and so they're so dull. If someone's been watching movies at night, obviously they're going to be so dull the next morning, or doing some other activity, with sex or other types of intoxication. You may need coffee to wake up. I'm not justifying it. But then one gets addicted to these things. I mean, my mother would take coffee, and when she didn't take it, she was impossible to deal with. I'd be talking to her in the morning before school, and I said, Mom, did you take your coffee yet? Please take it right now. Because otherwise, she was so much on edge, and she was jittery and everything like that. Don't tell my mother that. So, it just gives one a false sense. It separates. Intoxication, material intoxication we want to avoid, separates us from Krishna. Like I said, it's not the substance. It's the mentality and the use of it. Like even coffee, I'm sure, has some medicinal use to it. You understand? I'm sure that there's some medicinal hospital use for a stimulant like that. The Prabhupada actually said that. Even poison, Prabhupada said, has some medicinal use. Herbs have some medicinal use to it. But it has to be done for the proper reason and the proper supervision, etc., like that. So that's what intoxication is. You should avoid intoxication that takes us away from Krishna. All right, interesting. And don't take sugar to wake yourself up in the morning either.